I ran toward him crying. He looked at me confused. "I'm sorry. I think you're mistaking me for someone else." But the voice was identical, the marks on his face, everything. I followed him to his house. What I discovered there. My heart stopped when I saw it. But before we get into the story, please support us by liking and subscribing right now. I also want to say hi. Leave your name, city, and the word present in the comments. I want to know where you're listening from, even in faraway places. There, at table 14 of Olive Garden, sat Michael, my husband, the man I buried 6 months ago in an Italian marble crypt that cost $120,000. The man I cried for until I had no tears left. The man who was supposed to be dead. But he was alive. With a glass of wine in his hand, laughing at something a younger woman was saying across from him. I dropped my purse. My keys clattered on the tile floor. The hostess looked at me with concern. People at nearby tables turned to stare. I didn't care. My legs moved on their own, running through that restaurant like I was 20 again, like time hadn't turned my body into something slower, heavier. "Michael!" I screamed, and my voice sounded strange, mixed with a sob coming from deep in my chest. "Michael, my God, are you alive?" He turned. When his eyes met mine, I felt the world tilt. It was him. The same scar on his left eyebrow from when he fell off his motorcycle at 20. The same slightly crooked nose, broken in a bar fight he never liked to talk about. The same birthmark on his neck, small, but one I knew like the lines of my own hand. I reached out my arms, wanting to touch him, hug him, feel that this was real and not a delusion from my lonely mind. But he stepped back. "I'm sorry, ma'am," he said in that same hoarse voice I'd heard for 43 years. The voice that woke me in the mornings, that argued with me about money, that whispered he loved me on cold nights. "I think you're mistaking me for someone else." "Mistaking you?" I grabbed my phone with trembling hands, desperately searching for a photo of us. I found one from his last birthday before the accident. I showed him the screen, bringing it too close to his face. "Look, it's us. Don't you recognize me?" He looked at the photo. His eyes narrowed for a second, just a second. And then he shook his head with that soft but firm movement I knew so well. "I'm sorry. My name is Richard Miller. I've never seen this photo in my life." He put a hand on my shoulder, a brief touch, almost paternal. "You must be going through something difficult. Maybe you should sit down, drink some water." Richard Miller. The woman at his table stood up, clearly uncomfortable. "Rick, honey, is everything okay?" "Everything's fine, sweetheart," he said without taking his eyes off me. "Just a misunderstanding." Sweetheart. He called her sweetheart with the same tenderness he used to use with me. I looked at him more closely. His clothes were different. Michael always wore button-down shirts, even on weekends. This man wore a faded Chicago Bears t-shirt and worn jeans. His shoes were old sneakers, not the leather loafers Michael loved. But the face. God, the face was identical. "Your finger," I whispered, pointing at his left hand. "Show me your left hand." He frowned, confused, but raised his hand. And there it was. The crooked pinky finger, broken when Michael was 15, trying to fix his mother's roof. I felt my stomach turn. "Look, ma'am, I have to go," he said, pulling away. "I hope you feel better, but I really am not who you think I am." He returned to his table, put some bills down, and helped the woman put on her coat. They left through the side door. I stood there trembling while a waiter approached to ask if I needed help. I should have left. I should have sought help. But something inside me, that voice that always warned me when something was wrong, the same voice I'd ignored so many times throughout my life, screamed that this wasn't a coincidence. I followed them. I kept my distance, hiding behind cars in the parking lot like a thief. I watched him open the passenger door for her, kiss her cheek, walk around to the driver's side. They got into an old white Ford Taurus with a dent in the rear door. I memorized the license plate, HJK 3847. I got in my car, the Toyota Camry that Michael had given me 2 years before he died, and followed them through the city streets. My heart was beating so hard I could barely hold the steering wheel. We drove through downtown, past the neighborhood where we lived, and continued toward the west side, an area I rarely visited. He parked in front of a simple house painted seafoam green with a small garden and a white wooden fence. A common, anonymous house. He got out of the car, walked around, and opened the door for the woman. They walked hand in hand to the front door. Then the door opened from inside. 2 children ran out. A boy and a girl, maybe 8 and 10 years old, jumped on him shouting, "Grandpa! Grandpa! Did you bring ice cream?" Grandpa. He laughed. That crooked laugh I knew too. The woman ruffled the children's hair, smiled at him with love, and they all went inside together. The door closed. I sat in my car parked about 50 yards away while the afternoon sun came through the window and warmed my face, wet with tears I didn't even know I was crying. 43 years of marriage. 6 months of mourning. Entire nights crying alone, clutching the pillow that still held his scent. And he was here, alive, with another family, with grandchildren I didn't know existed. I took out my phone and took photos of the house, the car, the license plate. My hands shook so much that half the photos came out blurry, but I managed to get some clear ones. When daylight began to fade, I started the car and drove home on autopilot. I don't remember the route, just parking in the garage and sitting in the darkness looking at the photos on my phone, comparing them with old photos of Michael. Every detail matched, every mark, every feature, every imperfection. Friends, every story I tell you is released every day, but YouTube will only show them to you if you tap the red subscribe button. Please do it now while I'm speaking. Tap subscribe, turn on notifications, and you'll never miss a story. Have you done it yet? Thank you. I went into the house, the big empty house that Michael had left me, or rather, that I was left with when he died. I sat in the living room with the lights still off. And that's when a question pierced my mind like a cold lightning bolt. If Michael is alive, who the hell did we bury? I stayed up all night. Sitting at the kitchen table with a small lamp on, I spread out all the photos I had of Michael. Photos from our wedding, of him as a young man in that brown suit we rented because we couldn't afford to buy one. Photos of our son Brandon's birthdays, vacation photos, barbecues, Christmases. And next to them, on my phone screen, the photos I'd taken that afternoon. Zoom, zoom again. I compared every inch. The eyebrow scar, identical. The shape of his left ear, slightly larger than the right, the same. The birthmark on his neck shaped like a small comma in the exact same spot. Even the way he smiled crookedly, showing more teeth on the right side, was absolutely the same. I grabbed a magnifying glass I used for reading the small print on medications and examined an old photo of Michael shirtless, taken on a beach in Miami 15 years ago. There was the small, dark mole near his collarbone. I zoomed in on the phone photo where Richard was turning to get something from the car. His shirt had ridden up a bit. The same mole, in the same spot. Impossible. But twins wouldn't have the same birthmarks, right? Scars aren't genetic. And that broken finger. I got up, paced around the house, returned to the table. The wall clock read 4:20 in the morning. Outside, the city still slept. I grabbed the wedding album, ran my fingers over the faded images. There was Michael at 25, thin, smiling, with that thin mustache he later shaved off. There I was at 22, in a simple white dress my mother had sewn, hair pulled back with fresh flowers. We were poor. He worked as an assistant in a construction materials warehouse. I was a seamstress. We lived in a rented room that barely fit a bed, but we were happy, or at least I thought we were. When Brandon was born 3 years later, things started to improve. Michael had talent for sales. In 10 years, he went from assistant to manager. In 20 years, he owned 3 construction supply stores scattered throughout the city. Our life changed. Own house, car, occasional trips. But Michael traveled a lot for work, 2, 3 times a month. He'd be gone 4, 5 days closing deals, he said, visiting suppliers. I never suspected anything. Why would I? He always came back tired, stressed, complaining about meetings and highways. He brought gifts for me and Brandon. He said he missed us. Now, looking back with this new lens of horror, every trip seemed like a carefully constructed lie. When the sun came up, I was still sitting at the table surrounded by photos. I grabbed my phone and called Brandon. He answered on the 5th ring, his voice thick with sleep. "Mom, it's 6 in the morning. Did something happen? I need you to come over right now." "Now, Mom, I have a meeting at 9. "Brandon." My voice came out firm, loaded with something my son rarely heard. "Come now. It's about your father." Silence on the other end. "Mom, we've talked about this. You need to see a therapist. This prolonged grief." "I saw your father yesterday." Another silence, longer. "Mom, what have you taken? Did you forget to take a pill?" "Brandon, I saw your father alive at a restaurant and I followed him to his house. I need you to come here now and help me understand what's going on, because either I'm going crazy or I already am." "Stay there. Don't leave the house. Don't do anything. I'm coming." He hung up. I went to shower, to change clothes. When I looked at myself in the mirror, I got scared. Deep, dark circles, disheveled hair, chapped lips. I looked like I'd aged 10 years in one night. Brandon arrived 40 minutes later. He was wearing gym clothes. He must have run out of the house. He came in without knocking. He found me back at the kitchen table. "Mom, what happened?" He pulled up a chair, sat next to me, took my hand. His eyes were worried. That kind of worry that children get when they think their parents are losing their minds. I showed him the photos. First the old ones, then the new ones, explaining every detail, the scar, the birthmark, the broken finger. I told him about the encounter at the restaurant, how he treated me like a stranger, the fake name, the house, the woman, the children. Brandon looked at the photos in silence. His expression started to change. From worry to confusion, from confusion to something I couldn't identify. His hands trembled slightly as he zoomed in on one of the photos. "Yes, the resemblance is quite striking," he finally said, returning the phone. "But Mom, people look alike. I've seen 3 guys at the mall who could be my twin brothers. Brandon, it's not a resemblance. It's him. Mom, we buried Dad. You were there. I was there. Jessica, our aunts and uncles, his friends, everyone was there." "A closed casket," I whispered. "We buried a closed casket." Brandon ran a hand over his face, tired. "Because the body was, the accident was violent. The doctors said it was better that way, that you shouldn't see him. You saw him. Did you see your father's body with your own eyes?" Brandon looked away. "No, but the documentation was all there. The coroner released the body. There was a death certificate. Everything was in order." "I want to go to that house," I said, standing up. "Now, you're coming with me." "Mom, this is crazy. We can't just invade a stranger's house." "So you think he's a stranger?" He hesitated. "I think you're traumatized, Mom. You've suffered a lot. You're still suffering. And the brain, when it's in deep grief, can play tricks." Brandon Thomas. I used his full name, like when he was a child and got in trouble. "Are you coming with me to that house, or am I going alone?" "Because I'm going." He sighed, defeated. "Okay, let's go. But only so you can see it's someone else and you can move on." "Fine." We left in his car, a black, late-model Toyota Corolla. Morning traffic was already heavy. Brandon drove in silence, jaw clenched. I gave him directions. When we got to the Seafoam Greenhouses street, I told him to park a few yards away. "That's it," I pointed. The white Ford Taurus was in the driveway. There was a light on in the kitchen. We could see shadows moving through the curtains. Brandon stared at the house. His fingers drummed on the steering wheel, something he'd done when he was nervous since he was a little boy. "Do you want me to go?" I asked. "No, wait." We stayed there maybe 5 minutes. Then the front door opened. Richard came out wearing a blue mechanic's jumpsuit, carrying a toolbox. He walked to the Taurus. Brandon went pale. "Honey, are you okay?" He didn't respond. He just stared at the man getting into the car. The Taurus backed out of the driveway. It passed right by us. I could see his face clearly through the window. Michael. It was Michael. Older, more tired, but it was him. The car turned the corner and disappeared. When I looked at Brandon, I saw he was crying, silent tears running down his face. "Brandon," my stomach nodded. "Brandon, what aren't you telling me?" He rested his forehead on the steering wheel. "Mom." His voice came out broken. "Mom, I'm so sorry." And in that moment, as the morning sun illuminated the car's interior and my son collapsed beside me, I knew. I knew that what I was about to discover would destroy much more than my marriage. It would destroy our entire family. "Talk," I ordered, and my voice came out hard as stone. "Talk now, Brandon." He wiped his face with the back of his hand, breathing deeply, trying to pull himself together, but the tears kept falling. "Mom, it wasn't supposed to be like this. You were never supposed to find out." A cold sensation spread through my chest. "Find out what?" Brandon lifted his head, looked at me with those brown eyes he inherited from his father. Eyes that now carried guilt, fear, shame. Dad didn't die in that accident. The words hung in the air between us, simple, direct, devastating. I already knew it. Deep down, from the moment I saw him at the restaurant, I knew it. But hearing my son confirm it was like a punch to the stomach. "Continue," I whispered. He had this other family, Mom. For 25 years. That woman, Claudia, her children, who now have children of their own. He was living a double life between you two for 25 years. 25 years of lies. I thought about all the trips, all the nights he didn't come home, all of Brandon's birthdays he missed because he was closing an important deal. "And you knew?" I asked, though I already knew the answer from the way he avoided my gaze. "I found out about 3 years ago." He ran a hand through his hair, nervous. "It was an accident. I was helping Dad organize some papers from the store, and I found receipts, duplicate purchases, utility payments, water, food for 2 houses. I confronted him. And what did he say? That he loved you, Mom. That he never wanted to hurt you, but that he also loved Claudia. That he met her on a business trip out of state. That it was something that just happened, and then he couldn't leave her. He said he tried to end it several times, but couldn't." I laughed, a bitter laugh, without humor. "How convenient. The poor man couldn't leave his mistress. Mom? And you?" I turned to him, feeling anger for the first time. "You found out, and what? You accepted it? You kept his secret?" He begged me. Brandon's voice rose, desperate. He said if you found out, you'd destroy everything. You'd take half the stores, the house, everything. He said he needed time to fix things, to protect his assets. "You mean his money," I corrected. Brandon lowered his head. I didn't know what to do. "He's my father, Mom. And in a way, I also didn't want to lose everything. The stores, the business he built, that would someday be mine. So that was it. Greed. Pure and simple greed. "Tell me everything," I ordered. "From the beginning. I want to know every detail of this farce." Brandon took a deep breath, wiped his face again. 6 months ago, Dad came to see me. He said he couldn't stand the double life anymore, that he wanted to be with Claudia forever, start fresh with just her. But if he asked for a divorce, you'd get half of everything. So he faked his death. I completed the sentence, feeling nauseous. He'd consulted a lawyer, community property. You'd been married over 40 years. You'd be entitled to half the stores, the house, the savings. About $3.5 million, maybe more. $3.5 million. 43 years of marriage were worth $3.5 million he didn't want to share with me. So you planned his death. It wasn't exactly like that. He had the idea. He said he knew a guy, a homeless man who was terminally ill, no family. The guy was really dying, Mom. A matter of weeks. Dad offered him money. A lot of money. How much? $65,000 for the guy's only niece who lived out of state and never visited him. The money would be transferred after he died. I felt like I was going to vomit. You bought a body. If you want to know how this story ends and discover many more, hit the red subscribe button. It's free, and it helps me a lot. The guy was going to die anyway. Brandon defended himself, but his voice was weak. He agreed. He said at least his niece would have a better life. And the accident was staged. Dad drove to that small town, Cedarville, like he always did, but this time the man went with him. They caused a real car accident, but minor, just enough to call the police so there'd be a report. The man was taken to the hospital under Dad's name. He had his documents, his wallet, everything. And when he died 3 days later, they issued the death certificate as if he were Michael. Yes, the body arrived in a sealed coffin because supposedly it was disfigured in the accident and then at the hospital. I insisted you not open it, Mom, because inside was the corpse of a stranger. Brandon nodded, ashamed. I sat in silence, processing, remembering those terrible days. The call from the police, the race to the hospital. Brandon preventing me from entering the room, saying the doctor didn't recommend it, that the image would be too traumatic. I remembered the funeral. The mahogany coffin covered with white flowers, people crying, Michael's friends offering condolences, the pastor talking about the brevity of life, the legacy we leave. And all the time Michael was alive, planning his new life, leaving me behind as if our 43 years together meant nothing. And the crypt. My voice came out strange, distant. The Italian marble crypt that cost $120,000. Mom, there's a body in there. The man who died was buried as Michael T. Davis, with his documents, his identity. And Michael took half the money we had saved for emergencies. About $2.2 million that was in investments in his name. He transferred it all a few days before the accident. He moved to a new city, created a new identity. Richard Miller. He started a new life with Claudia, with the grandchildren I never knew existed. With his other family. Yes. I closed my eyes, breathed deeply, tried not to scream, not hit, not break something. And you? I opened my eyes, stared at my son. What did you get out of this whole story? Brandon swallowed. The stores, all three. As sole heir, they passed to me automatically, plus the house, which was already in my name for a couple years for estate planning. How much are the stores worth, Brandon? How much? About $4 million, but I've already sold 2. I only kept the biggest one on Main Avenue. I invested the rest of the money. So you profited from this. It wasn't a question, it was a statement. I took care of you, Mom. I gave you a monthly allowance. Of how much? $1,200? I laughed. A loud laugh, almost hysterical. Less than what a cleaning lady makes. While you took $4 million, your father ran off with almost 2.5, and I stayed here crying every night, taking sleeping pills, going to a support group for widows. The tears finally came, hot, bitter, furious. I cried for him, Brandon. I cried until I couldn't breathe. I looked at his photo on the nightstand and begged God to take me too, because I couldn't stand the pain of living without him. Mom, I'm so sorry. And you knew? I screamed, finally losing control. You knew and you let me suffer. You let me spend $120,000 on a crypt for a stranger. You let me believe my husband was dead while he was alive, happy with another family. I didn't know what to do. He's my father, and I'm your mother. The silence that followed was heavy, suffocating. Brandon cried openly now, but I felt no pity. I only felt a cold, controlled rage growing in my chest like a storm. Take me home, I said calmly. Mom, we need to talk about... Take me home. He drove in silence. When we arrived, I got out of the car without looking back. "Mom, please!" I slammed the door and went inside. I went straight to the bedroom. I grabbed all the photos of Michael and put them in a box. 43 years of memories. Wedding, birthdays, trips, smiles, hugs, all lies. I closed the box and put it on the highest shelf in the closet. Then I sat on the bed and looked around. The big empty house. The empty life. The last 6 months of wasted grief. And I started to plan. Because if my 68 years of life had taught me anything, it's that you can't trust anyone. Not your husband, not your son, only yourself. And I was going to make them both pay, each one in their own way. But first, I needed evidence. Evidence that couldn't be denied, ignored, or explained away. Evidence that would destroy the perfect little life they'd built on the foundation of my tears. For the next 3 days, I didn't answer any of Brandon's calls. He called 47 times, sent 63 text messages, showed up at my door twice, ringing the doorbell insistently. I saw him through the bedroom window, but didn't open the door. I didn't want to see his face. Not yet. Because I needed time to think, to plan, and most importantly, to bury what was left of naive Helen and replace her with someone stronger. On the 4th day, I woke up different. I took a long shower, got dressed, put on lipstick for the first time in months, grabbed my purse, and left. My neighbor, Mrs. Parker, was watering her plants. "Good morning, Helen. You look beautiful today." She smiled, surprised. It had been a long time since she'd seen me dressed up. "Good morning, Teresa. I'm going to run some errands." I smiled back, a smile that didn't reach my eyes. I drove downtown. I'd searched online and found what I was looking for. Gus Investigations. The office was in an old building, 3rd floor, suite 305. I climbed the stairs. The elevator was broken. I knocked on the frosted glass door with the name painted in peeling gold letters. "Come in," answered a hoarse voice. The office was small, cluttered, smelling of stale coffee and cigarettes. Behind a desk piled with papers sat a man about 60 years old, bald, with a wrinkled dress shirt and rolled-up sleeves. He looked at me over his reading glasses. "Can I help you?" "I need to hire your services," I said, sitting in the chair across from him without waiting for an invitation. He leaned back, evaluating me. I knew what he saw. A gray-haired lady, well-dressed with discreet jewelry. Someone with money. What kind of service? An investigation into a person. I took out my phone, showed him the photo of Richard I'd taken. I need to know everything about this man. Where he lives, where he works, who he associates with, how much money he has, everything. Gus took the phone, zoomed in on the photo. Cheating husband? Ex-husband, who's supposed to be dead. That caught his attention. He leaned forward. "Interesting story. Continue." I told him. Not everything, but enough. The accident, the funeral, the encounter at the restaurant, the other family. I didn't mention Brandon. Not yet. I'd save that card to play at the right time. Gus listened in silence, taking occasional notes in an old notepad. "And you want proof?" he concluded when I finished. "I want everything. Documents, photos, recordings if possible. I need something undeniable. This is going to cost you, for a job of this level, $12,000. Half now, half when I deliver the complete report." I opened my purse, took out my checkbook, filled one out for $6,000 and handed it to him. "I want results in a week." Gus smiled, showing coffee-stained teeth. "You're a direct woman. I like that." He put away the check. "I'll need some information. His real name, any documents you have, anything that can help." "His real name is Michael T. Davis. The fake one is Richard Miller." I wrote down the details on a piece of paper, including the seafoam green house address, the Taurus license plate, the approximate time he left for work. "Excellent. I'll start today. I'll call you if I find anything." I left the office feeling something I hadn't felt in a long time. Purpose. In the following days, I returned to that street, always at different times, using hats or scarves to disguise myself. I observed his routine. Richard left every day at 7 in the morning driving the old Taurus. He came back at 6 in the evening. On Saturdays, he stayed home playing with his grandchildren in the yard. On Sundays, they all went to the 10 o'clock mass at the neighborhood church. The perfect life. The happy family. While I, the legal wife, cried alone in the darkness. Claudia seemed to be a housewife. She didn't work outside the home. She took care of the house, the grandchildren when her daughters were working. She was attractive for her age, well-maintained. She wore simple but neat clothes. She smiled a lot. I hated her. A week later, Gus called me. "I have the report. You can come pick it up." I was at his office in 20 minutes. He handed me a thick brown folder full of documents. "Sit down," he said seriously. "You're going to want to be sitting for this." I opened the folder. The first page was a copy of Richard Miller's birth certificate. Date of issue, 7 years ago. Registered at a small registry office outside the state. "It's fake," Gus explained. "A good one, but fake. The original certificate for that name belongs to a baby who died in the 50s. Your husband bought the identity." I turned the page. Photos of Michael entering and leaving a small mechanic shop with a sign on the door. "Keys and repairs, Miller." "He works there," Gus continued. "He's a locksmith, makes about $4,000 a month. Simple life, modest." "And the money?" I asked. "The $2.2 million he had?" Gus turned to another section of the folder. Bank statements. Many bank statements. Here's where it gets interesting. 7 years ago, a certain Richard Miller opened accounts in 3 different banks with initial deposits totaling $2 million. Since then, he's been withdrawing about $10,000 a month, leaving the rest in conservative funds. So the money was there. The money that was also mine by community property law. Half of that, $1 million, was mine. There's more. Gus turned another page. I got access to his phone records for the last 6 months. My heart raced. Multiple calls to the same number, about 200 total, some over an hour long. He circled a number with a red pen. "Have you identified whose it is?" I asked, though something in my gut already knew the answer. Gus looked at me seriously. "It's your son's, Brandon T. Davis." There it was in black and white. Proof of the double betrayal. Calls before the accident. Calls during the 6 months I spent in mourning. Calls last week after I confronted Brandon. "They talk regularly," Gus said. "Before, during, and after the faked death. Your son was in on this from the beginning." I felt my hands trembling. I closed the folder. "Anything else?" "Yes. The house they live in isn't in Richard's name. It's in Claudia's, bought 22 years ago. They have a son together, 23 years old, living in New York, and 3 grandchildren from her 2 daughters from a previous relationship. So he really built an entire life for 25 years. Seems so. And from what I could find out, Claudia doesn't know he was married before. For her, Richard Miller has always been Richard Miller, a widower she met out of state." I grabbed the folder, put it in my purse. "How much do I owe you?" "The other $6,000. I wrote the check. As I handed it to him, Gus held my hand. "Look, normally I don't get involved, but you seem like a decent person. Whatever you're planning to do with this information, think it through carefully. These cases of document fraud, faked death, that's a federal crime. Years in prison, understand?" "I understand perfectly," I said, smiling for the first time since I'd discovered the truth. "Thank you for your concern, Gus, but I know exactly what I'm going to do." I left the office clutching the folder like it was the most precious thing in the world. Because it was. It was the key to completely destroying the lives of the 2 men who had destroyed mine. At home, I spread all the documents on the living room table. Photos, statements, call records, fake certificates. I read everything, memorized every detail. Then I picked up the phone and made a call I'd been putting off. "Jimena Ruiz Law Office. Good afternoon." "Good afternoon. I'd like to make an appointment with Ms. Ruiz. It's urgent." "Are you already a client, ma'am?" "No, but I have a case of fraud, document falsification, and estate fraud that I think she'll be very interested in. A pause on the other end. Can you come tomorrow at 3 in the afternoon? I'll be there. I hung up and looked out the window. The sun was setting, painting the sky orange and pink. A beautiful, peaceful day. The last day of peace Michael and Brandon would have for a very, very long time, because the storm had only just begun, and I was going to be the lightning that destroyed everything. I met with Jimena Ruiz the next day. She was a sharp woman in her 40s with intelligent eyes that missed nothing. I told her everything. The 43 years of marriage, the double life, the faked death, the bought corpse, the son who knew and hid it, the millions diverted, the measly allowance. When I finished, she sat back and whistled softly. Mrs. Davis, this is a bomb. I know. We're talking about multiple crimes, identity fraud, scam, concealment of a corpse, document falsification, tax evasion. Your husband and son could face 3 to 8 years in prison, each. I felt a cold satisfaction in my chest. Good. She looked at me, evaluating. You want to press criminal charges against both. I want justice. I want every last cent they stole from me returned. I want them to pay for what they did. Jimena smiled, someone who had done this many times before. Then let's build an airtight case. That's exactly what we did. Over the following weeks, we gathered evidence, filed motions, prepared the legal assault that would bring down the house of cards they'd built. And when the day came, when the police knocked on Brandon's door at 6 in the morning, when Michael was arrested at his locksmith shop in front of his co-workers, when their perfect little lies crumbled into dust, I felt no guilt. I felt free. Because I'd learned something important in those terrible months. Dignity isn't negotiable. Respect isn't something you beg for. And self-love is worth more than any family bond built on a lie. I'd learned that it's never too late to demand justice. That being 70 years old doesn't mean you have to accept everything in silence. That age doesn't just bring wisdom, but also courage. And most importantly, I learned that the best revenge isn't destroying those who hurt you. It's rebuilding yourself. Stronger, freer, more yourself than ever. If you enjoyed this story, click subscribe and tell me in the comments what part impressed you. There's more tomorrow. See you there.